Welcome back, everyone. It's Eliza Sidner-Rom here with part 6, where I want to talk about transitioning into riding off the lunge line. So here's the lovely DW lunging so nicely, walk, trot, and canter, and I've been riding him on the lunge line with Kate lunging me, and he does not have side reins when I ride him, but otherwise everything is the same. Kate lunges him, I just sit up there and I ride him at walk and trot, canter if he feels good, for maybe one circle, but mostly just walk and trot. That's been going really well. So now we want to transition into the next step. At this point, I still lunge him without a rider first, but really only 3 to 5 minutes each way, just enough to walk, trot, and canter, see how he feels. And then I climb on, and Kate lunges me on him. And now that we've done this a few times, I'm beginning to take over the aids, and she's beginning to do a little bit less. So she's still there primarily making him go, but as she asks him to trot, for example, I also put my leg on. As she asks him to walk, I also sit down and use my voice. And when that can happen and he starts to respond to my leg to go forward and respond to me bringing him back to the walk or being able to steer him a little bit, that's when I feel like we're ready to go off the lunge line. So when I'm comfortable with that, which might be a few rides on the lunge line, it might be a couple weeks on the lunge line, totally depends. DW here, of course, is super relaxed, so it's been a few rides on the lunge line. He feels quite good. I'm ready to try it. So now Kate undoes the lunge line. He's not attached to anyone, but she's going to pretend to lunge him. So she's sent me out on the circle. I'm walking around, and he kind of thinks he's still attached to her, but he's not, of course. So she is still acting as if she's lunging him. She has the whip. She has the lunge line in her left hand since we're going to the left. But of course, she can't do anything with the lunge line. But she can still send him forward. She can still send him out. And we're going to ask him together to do things. So there she asked him to trot, and I asked him to trot. And she can be my backup. I don't want to have to start using a lot of leg because he still doesn't really know what that means. She's going to help me get him to go forward, and I'm just going to introduce the aids that he starts to put 2 and 2 together. Oh, you squeezed me, and that meant trot. That's the idea. There's still not a ton of steering that I need to do at this point because he's so used to going on the lunge line now, and he thinks he's still attached. But we're going to gradually move the circle up and down the arena so that I ask him to go straight for just a couple meters, and then we go ahead and turn again, and then we circle at that new point, and then I ask him to go straight for just a couple meters again. So I introduce the steering this way so that I'm not trying to go all the way around the edge of the arena at this point, because the steering is usually the hardest part at this point. He's comfortable with me being on his back. That's no longer super new. He's comfortable going forward, but steering him off of the bit is going to be the newest thing to him at this point. We're going to practice another transition to trot here, where we do it together, but I try to do more of it and Kate less of it. And then we're going to practice going straight again for a little bit further down the long side. So I want you all to watch for the next minute or so how I steer DW, and then I want to talk about it because steering a baby horse is really very different from steering an educated horse. The other thing to notice here is that we are trying to get him to go fairly forward. And at this stage, a lot of young horses are like DW, where they're not naturally super forward, and I don't take that to mean that they are lazy. This is still all so new to him, and he's such a good boy and relaxed and trusting that he's not offering yet to be very forward, but we want to try to get him fairly forward because that's going to be easier to ride and easier to steer. such a good boy. So at this point, when I need to steer him going straight down the long side for a couple steps, Kate and I need to communicate that somehow. Kate could tell me, okay, we're going down the long side now, or I can tell Kate, okay, we're going down the long side now. It depends a little bit on how sensitive the horse is. If the horse is still very sensitive, I'd rather have the ground person say that. But DW is not all that sensitive, and he doesn't seem too affected by my voice. So I'm telling Kate that we're going to go straight for a couple strides, and then she walks with me down the center line. So Kate is still helping to send him a couple meters down the rail. And then when I want to go straight, I'm looking where I want to go first and foremost. I'm not looking where he's taking me, because he's probably going to take me where I don't want to go. So I'm looking where I want to go, and then I'm going to weight my outside stirrup a little bit to take him towards the wall for a couple steps, and I'm going to use an opening rein. I don't pull the rein up or down. I keep it at the same height, but I open it to the side so that I pull the rein a little bit as if I'm pulling the bit sideways in his mouth a little to give pressure one way or the other. If you're a dressage rider and you think of how you ride your advanced dressage horse, this is not how we steer them. We do not weight one stirrup a lot more. We don't open the rein way far. We use very subtle steering aids, and we do use our weight, and we do use a little bit of direct rein pressure, but we use a lot of outside aids to turn a horse. And that does not work with a baby horse. Horses naturally lean into pressure. I want to repeat that. Horses naturally lean into pressure. You have to teach them to yield to pressure. So that's what we were doing on the ground when he was young, teaching him to yield to pressure where he feels it for us to tell him to halt. Yield to pressure when we tell him to move away and a turn on the forehand. Yield to pressure when we ask him to back up. We started teaching him to yield to pressure really early on, but you have to remember that their natural instinct is still to lean into pressure until they're much more educated. So when I want to make him go straight for a couple meters, I'm going to weight my stirrup so that I actually knock him a little bit off balance into the direction that I want to go and away from the direction that he wants to go. And then I'm going to use a little bit of outside rein opening to take him out in little tugs on the rein. The tug is the best word that I can think of, because I certainly don't want to pull hard on it or jerk it, but I also don't want to hold a steady pressure, because guess what? He's going to lean into that. So I give a little tug, let go as I take him out. If you think back to when you were teaching the horse to lunge, if they were to pull out on the lunge line, this is the same way you turn them. Little tug on the lunge line, let go. Tug, let go. Because if you pulled the lunge line hard and they pulled against that, then they would spin around likely on the lunge line. So the point is obvious here as well, that he's not very good at halting yet. He feels the pressure on his mouth and he leans against it instead of stopping. But he doesn't mean any harm by that, so I don't get mad at him for that. And now we're going to end our session the same way I like to end every day. We walk up the center line, which I'm doing a little bit, but mostly he's following Kate. And then we're going to halt together at X. And then I'm going to get off and tell him that he's amazing and the smartest horse in the world and a superstar. What I like to think of with young horses is that my body needs to be in the present and my mind needs to be in the very near future. So my body is going with him and my mind is thinking ahead to what I want next and also what could happen next that I might not want. The ground person is so important at this point because I do not want to get into an argument with this horse about going forward or about going out on the edge of the circle because he doesn't really understand what any of these aids mean yet. my leg, the rein. So I really want the ground person to still be able to send him forward if I run into an issue of him not wanting to go forward. Next video, we'll talk about me taking over and the ground person doing less and less so that I'm really riding him instead of half riding him. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.